Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Speak Uneasy, a horror, attraction and culture podcast. In today's episode we're going to be giving you our thoughts and views from Burton's Screamfest. Screamfest is one of the Midlands' leading scare attractions, boasting 5 different mazes, some live entertainment and some rides to enjoy as well. The 5 mazes we had to look forward to were Insomnia, Creed Farm, Hillbilly Joe's Zombie Zoo, Freak Out on Tour, and Love Hurts, Last Orders, a beloved maze in its final iteration. As always, a few caveats apply to tonight's episode. There is a mixture of studio and live audio, so we pre-apologise for any disparagement between the two, both in terms of quality and volume. And also, the views and opinions expressed within are that of the individual. And as always, my words are not gospel. Just because I have enjoyed something doesn't mean you will, and just because I have not enjoyed something does not mean you won't. It's also worth bearing in mind that all reviews are of a live entertainment performance, so things can vary. You may get a great run, I may get a bad run, so on and so forth. So with that in mind, let's jump into the live audio, direct from Burton's Screamfest 2022.
Okay, so we are here in Burton-on-Trent, ready for Screamfest. Initial thoughts, the hub area for Screamfest is gorgeous. Roamers are really active, they've already been working the entrance queues, literally greeting guests as they filter through. The whole site looks and feels very festival-esque. So yeah, this is setting the tone really, really nicely for some great screams.
One of the things that Burton's Screamfest really understands is the auxiliary things around the mazes that make it go from a collection of mazes into an event. As I mentioned there, the central hub is an incredibly nice place to relax, get some food, get a drink. I think these things are really important when we're talking about a scare attraction and a scare event as a whole. Burton have a really good understanding in regards to this. However, it doesn't matter how good a central hub is unless the mazes are there to support it. So join us as we enter in for our first maze to see how it fares.
Okay, so we've just come out of Hillbilly Joe's Zombie Zoo here at Screamfest in Burton. What I will say is that is an incredibly fun maze. It's very, very silly throughout, lots of fun different points at which you're going through the zoo, lots of different sets. Good use of elevation changes as well. Nice to get a crawl space in there. Always adds that little bit of tension before a payoff, and they do pay it off, which is nice. Overall, really, really fun maze. Actors very, very active in there, very, very keen to get stuff done, get up in your face and really give you some high quality scares. So a maze that can manage to make you jump and laugh is always a win for me. So Hillbilly Joe's, very, very good first impressions here at Screamfest.
So the first thing I want to say about Hillbilly Joe's Zombie Zoo is that it's fundamentally dumb, and I love that. I love fundamentally dumb. If you've already listened to the Dr. Fright's episode, you'll understand again that fun and fear are perfect bedfellows. And Zombie Zoo is another great example of that. There were many moments in there where I found myself chuckling, only to then find myself going, oh, a series of expletives, as something jumps out at me. You go through a series of sections in Hillbilly Joe's Zombie Zoo, ranging from the pens where they keep the zombies to the gift shop itself. Every single actor that is in that attraction understands that this is to be fun, and they deliver that very, very well. There aren't many places in the world where you can see Zombie Santa. That was a particular highlight for me, as I love both horror and Christmas. Hillbilly Joe's maintains a decent sense of pace throughout, not having too many dead spots, but having enough time for you to catch your breath and also build tension. Again, the interactions with the actors are funny and are enjoyable. Whether or not you like the premise, or perhaps you think it's a bit too tongue-in-cheek, is regardless. This maze won't be for everybody, but for those who are going to enjoy it, they are really going to enjoy it. And I'm happy to say that I'm one of the people who managed to really enjoy this maze. So this was a very strong start for Burton Screamfest. Let's see how we got on with our next maze, to see if Burton Screamfest could continue on such a strong start.
Okay, so we just come out of Creed Farm, a maze with chainsaws and all that good stuff. What I would say is excellent use of stop-start, people there ready to make sure people are spaced out so you don't have batching issues. You know, some great use of expectations and subverting that. The chainsaw actors are clearly having a great time, which is always lovely to see. It's always lovely to see someone smiling when they use a chainsaw, you know? So yeah, overall, like really great maze. A lot of fun interactions. A massive shout out to Mum. She was particularly good fun and did a fantastic job of just letting us have a bit of time to have a breather before that second half finale, and also just make sure we were enjoying ourselves. So yeah, all the way through, fantastic run through, and these guys are absolutely on form this evening. So yeah, Creed Farm gets a massive amount of love from me. Fantastic maze.
So that was our second maze of the evening. Again, another incredibly strong maze here at Burton Screamfest. I must say, I think Creed Farm is my favourite of all of the crop mazes that I've done thus far. It has a great use of are they aren't they moments where you're walking through the scarecrows, manages to maintain a very solid amount of tension. The first half of the maze kind of functions like a hooded maze. You are plunged into pure darkness and asked to follow a rope. There's some very inventive ideas in there that I don't want to spoiler because I'm A, not 100% sure how they did one of the things they did, and B, I think it's one of those things that when you see it for yourself, you'll think it's pretty cool. The second half of the maze is your traditional maze, or crop maze. Again, I really shouldn't be a farmer. I clearly have no idea what sort of crop I'm looking at. From that point on, you get to meet the family. And as per standard, this family isn't exactly all that sane. They are quite friendly and they seem very keen to meet you though. As I mentioned, the highlight of my run through for me, other than the finale, which again, we try to remain fairly spoiler free, but as you may have been able to guess from the sounds in the background, may involve chainsaws, was Ma, or Mum. She was an incredibly funny actress, delivered some great dialogue, set a great amount of tension, but also allowed us to have some fun with her before we went through to that finale. We had a younger member of the group in our batch, not with us specifically, but batched with us, and Mum made sure that she was very motherly towards the younger guest, assuring him that he was a very handsome young man and it's going to be a shame to see him go. Things like this are really fun. It's those little interactions that kind of make a maze feel unique, and it's the things like this that allow a run to become memorable. Those little jokes and those little moments are what make scare mazes very special, is that it is a live performance art. You are a participant in the world rather than just a spectator. And little moments like that really give a sense of individuality to every run through. For example, we referenced Half Pint for the rest of our evening. We often wondered how Half Pint was getting on with the rest of the mazes. And that's very much thanks to some throwaway dialogue from Mum. So if you were playing Mum on the 23rd of October, just want to say thanks. Really fun interactions, really appreciated that. So this is 2 for 2 on very strong mazes thus far for Burton Screamfest. At this moment we decided, since we were nearly halfway through our mazes, we wanted to take a little moment to enjoy some of the entertainment. And I must say, the entertainment is every bit as silly as some of the mazes themselves. You are basically greeted with an extreme sideshow style show, but it's done by a band of hillbillies. So once again, you're introduced to the family and the weird and wonderful things that they can do. One of the bizarre highlights for me was watching the striptease I never knew I wanted to see. And I can't help but agree with you. The lady that was both your sister and your cousin was mesmerising. I found myself consistently laughing throughout this show, and I found myself consistently wincing at some of the other elements of the show. It really is a fun show, so I do implore you, if you are heading down to Screamfest next year, and it is there again, to just stop and take a little bit of time to enjoy the entertainment. The freak show style element is also interspersed with live band. Unfortunately, I didn't get as much time as I would have liked to enjoy every band that played that evening, but the ones that I did catch certainly were of a good standard. So, at this point we have 2 great mazes, some great entertainment, and a real nice festival vibe. As you can probably gather, Screamfest Burton is starting to look like a really strong scare event. After a moment to reset ourselves and after enjoying the entertainment, we decided it was time to change some laughs for some scares. From there we went out on to Freak Out on tour. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get any live audio following the maze, so you'll have to forgive me for that. Freak Out on Tour is a clown maze that is set under the, again, nicely silly premise of throwing a rave inside of an abandoned scare maze. You are greeted by two individuals who want to tell you about this great rave that you're about to experience, and not to worry, because this is an abandoned scare maze, so obviously nothing bad could happen. You'll be shocked to learn that as they go to throw the lights to start the rave, things aren't as they appear. You are then greeted by one of many clowns in this maze. Freak Out on Tour is ram-packed with actors. There is great uses of multiple pathways. The actors are hugely energetic, as clowns should be. The layouts and sets are serviceable. Isn't a bad looking maze, but I would say by Screamfest standards it certainly seemed the weakest. And again, that is not to say that it is a bad looking maze, because it isn't. It's just that a lot of the sets in Screamfest were incredibly strong, so this felt noticeably lower, but only by the standard of the event. You find yourself moving through various big top rooms, being caught out by misdirection scares, a mirror maze. I think one of the largest jumps I had of the evening was actually seeing my own face. That being said, there is a reason I record a podcast. Freak Out on Tour overall is a lot of fun. The only minor criticisms that I do have of the maze is that I would like to have seen a stronger finale. The maze really feels like it's building to something very chaotic and very fun, whereas the ending itself did feel a little bit toned down when compared with the rest of the maze. My only other criticism is that we did find ourselves falling victim to somewhat of a conga line in the latter half of the maze. This is always a risk when you have a mirror maze section in a scare maze. And again, this is not to say that every run through will have a conga line problem. This is simply to say that we experienced that. And as I said, overall, Freak Out on Tour was a lot of fun. These are just some minor things that I'd love to see tightened up for the next version of Freak Out. Freak Out was certainly the weaker of the mazes we'd experienced thus far, but by no means a weak maze, leaving Burton Scarefest now for 3 out of 3 unenjoyable fun mazes. Once again, this is looking incredibly strong. Once we finished up at Freak Show on Tour, we decided to head over to do Love Hurts, The Last Orders, which, as I said in the intro, is the final iteration of a very beloved maze here at Burton Screamfest. This was my first experience with Love Hurts, so I was very excited to find out why this was such a loved maze. Let's go to the live audio and find out.
Just come out of Love Hurts. Initial thoughts, incredibly pretty maze. This is kind of one of their big sort of returning mazes. In fact, it's in its final year now. The sets are fantastic. The actors work their rooms very well. All over, very enjoyable maze. My only criticism is if I were to have one a little bit on the short side, would have liked perhaps a little bit more of that.
As I mentioned, I did think the maze was a little bit on the short side, but let me tell you, despite its short run time, what an incredibly inventive and interesting maze. Visually, one of the stronger mazes here at Burton Screamfest, and that is a pretty high bar. None of the mazes are offensive to the eye by any means, but this one is particularly standout. You find yourself going down into the sewerage works and wading your way through these underground caverns. There is gore, there is sewers, there is a room which is done to great effect with the laser and smoke trick to make it look like a swamp. Everything has a grim, dirty, dangerous feel to it, and Love Hurts completely achieves that almost effortlessly. As I say, this is a very fast-paced maze. There is no fat on it. There is no filler here. Every single bit of the maze feels great. You are left with a particularly enjoyable finale, which, as someone who has a soft spot for the pomp and pageantry of an unveil, that left me smiling. So, again, an incredibly enjoyable maze that's incredibly visually stunning and is a lot of fun. But again, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more length there. In fact, I actually go on to do another live recording, which I think kind of echoes what I'm trying to say here.
So far, so good. We are 4 mazes down. So far, there's not really been a weak maze, which is a real nice thing to be able to say. Sure, again, not every maze is perfect. I would have loved to have seen Love Hurts just be a little bit longer, but that's surely a good thing. You know, the fact that we were in that maze, we were enjoying it, and I wanted a little bit more, that's got to be better than thinking, oh God, I can't wait for this to end. You know, not in the fun way, at least. You know, a lot of times you can be at that point where you go, God, I want this to end, and it's because you're absolutely terrified. It was a fun maze, it was well constructed, beautiful sets throughout, great actors throughout, lots and lots of good pacing and block points. The actors really know that they wanted to make sure that you were going to get each scene as it was intended, so maximum props to every one of the actors inside Love Hurts. Really, really good. Creed Farm, again, a wonderful example of what a corn maze can be, or a maze, a crop maze. Let's say crop maze. So the crop mazes can be a lot of fun, and this is definitely one of the better ones that I've experienced. Great use of mannequins and aren't they real moments. Fun actors throughout, great dialogue, funny, good amount of jumps in there. Really, really solid maze, and again, I think a shining example of what a crop maze can be. Freak Out on tour. A lot of fun in terms of, you know, it's a clown maze. You're going to know whether you want to be in there or not by the fact that it's a clown maze. In terms of clown mazes, this is pretty good. A lot of fun, again, very, very mobile actors. I think that's one of the big strong suits for Screamfest so far, is that every single actor in every single maze has really been working their socks off. I don't know what the chain of command looks like at this venue, but they either instill a massive amount of fear in their staff, and they must do a good job, or, as I suspect, they cultivate a really fun working environment, and that just pays off. It does seem like Screamfest is one of those events that if you're working it, you probably have a passion for it, and that kind of shows all the way through. All the staff tonight have been fantastic, from the bar staff to the actors themselves, to the intros, to the batchers. Batchers have been very, very strong. The only complaint that I had in terms of batching was in fact Freak Out on tour, but again, it's so difficult. People don't realise how hard that job of batching is, and there are many events that are fantastic that do occasionally have a bit of stumble with that, but outside of that very minor concern, everything this evening has been great. The hub feels fantastic. It's got a real nice sort of festival vibe. Hobgoblin have a beer tent here, or beer stand here, I think it's probably more appropriate. So if you do like your ales, there's that. And there's pizzas, there's donuts, there's lots of local suppliers. So it feels like a bit of a nice community effort, which it feels weird to say community effort when you're running from chainsaws, but I definitely think Screamfest has that in buckets. A lot of fun, and I'm pretty sure definitely on the list for next year again. So we have one maze remaining, which is Insomnia. I'm very, very excited to see this. The premise of the maze is that you walk through a child's nightmares. This has the scope and potential to be absolutely phenomenal. If they've taken this idea and they've really run with it, this could be an absolute mind trip of a maze. You can happily dance through different themes, different settings, different time periods, night, day, anything you want. There is so much room for inventiveness in this idea, and I'm really, really, really excited to see what Burton Screamfest do with that.
So, as I'm sure you could tell, I was pretty excited to experience Insomnia. I was so excited, in fact, that I completely forgot to record a post-maze clip. So, please forgive me, as the studio audio doesn't tend to have quite as much energy as the live recordings. So, if you can just imagine me sounding a lot more excited, that'd be great. Insomnia did in fact play with multiple different ideas and multiple different nightmares. We had things ranging from playrooms to dentists to changing of perspectives, changing of shapes, playing with visual tricks. There's also a transition in there that, again, I don't want to spoil, especially in case they bring Insomnia back. The child in question is plagued by a nightmarish figure referred to as Crackerjack, and Crackerjack can appear almost anywhere. There is a moment in that maze where you step through from one room into a different room, and I don't want to spoil it, and I hate how vague this sounds, but if you've experienced the attraction, I imagine you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where the scope and scale of where you are stood changes dramatically. That is one of the coolest sets I have seen in a scare maze. It is done to great effect and left me feeling genuinely astonished as to how they've managed to achieve the scale and the realism of what I was experiencing. So Insomnia overall is a very, very good maze. I love the fact that the queue line is effectively a pre-show and that sets the premise and tone for the rest of the maze. And I really appreciated a lot of the transitions and different sets and scenes. There's some very clever scares in there in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect and that don't necessarily traditionally fall under a standard scare. And there is mostly a cohesiveness in the madness of it all. My only small criticism, the finale of the maze, I would have liked to have seen one last sort of big payoff on that maze, because the maze itself is so very good. I felt like it deserved a little bit more. And again, we didn't get to rerun the maze, so it could just be that we mistimed our finale. That can happen. If you have done Insomnia and the finale is there, please feel free to let me know what it was, because I would love to find out. Again, I think that's one of the biggest compliments I can give it, is that I really enjoyed the story. And when you take a maze that is incredibly clever, incredibly visually impactful, does things a little bit differently, has some off-the-wall and out-of-the-box thinking, and you make it and realize it in such a consistent, well-built fashion, it's kind of an undeniable recipe for a great maze. If that finale is there and it is something that we simply missed, then this is undeniably a great maze. If, however, our run was correct and that the ending did fall a little bit flat, then I would implore Screamfest to give us one last big finale if you bring Insomnia back next year, because this possibly had some of my favourite moments of any of the mazes this evening, and the potential for further iterations of Insomnia is limitless. So I really look forward to finding out where Crackerjack could pop up next. Something else I would like to add to the general review of the event, in addition to the 5 good mazes, the great selection of food and drink, the fun festival atmosphere, the good entertainment that's put on throughout the evening, and of course the rides that you can enjoy as well, one of the things that stood out to me in terms of Screamfest is the range of merchandise in which they offer. This is something that I really want to see scare events getting on board with in the future. From a business point of view, it is a way to generate more money, and from a fan point of view, it's a nice keepsake. It's a nice thing. We are fans, we are fanatics, we are nerds about the stuff that we enjoy. We want to be able to display that, be it in the form of a t-shirt or a pin badge. Those little things make what is a good event feel like it has a higher level of prestige. And again, that's something that Screamfest Burton seemed to understand. Add prestige to your event and it will pay dividends. So that may seem like a weird thing to want to add there as an additional point, but it is important to us as event goers. So that concluded our time at Screamfest in Burton. 5 good mazes, a lot of fun had, a lot of laughter, and importantly a few good jumps along the way. If you are looking to fill out your calendar ready for 2023, I would highly recommend that Screamfest makes its way onto one of your dates. Thank you once again for listening in to today's episode. If you have enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it with your friends, hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on, and share on social media. These small steps really help, especially in these early stages where every extra listener is a massive increase for us. If you've mostly enjoyed the podcast but have some areas you'd like to see improved, feel free to email the speakuneasypod@aol.com. You can also email us if you just want to say hi, that's fine too. Or you can give us feedback on Instagram or Twitter using the handle @thespeakuneasy. Once again, thank you for joining us in our review for Burton Screamfest 2022. As always, take care and stay scared.